Hey, Andrew here from the Investor's Way, and welcome to Woody's Weekly Wisdom, episode number 34. And today I'm going to talk to you about inflation and rent and the impacts that inflation is having on rent, or rental inflation, and what that means for you as an investor. So, these weekly wisdom videos are all about giving you information designed to help you with your money management and your investing. And so I wanted to stay away from the news this week about potential interest rate increases. And because we know, we've talked about that many times over recent weeks. But today I wanted to just highlight something that, whilst it's causing a great deal of pain in the market, as investors, it's something that we need to be aware of. And as in most things in life, wherever there's a little bit of pain, somebody else is potentially gaining. And for this particular article, what I'm going to point out, whilst I feel that the rental inflation is causing a lot of grief for a lot of people, if you are a property investor, then this is actually a piece of good news for you. Now, I know that could be troublesome for some people to hear me necessarily saying this is good news. I'm not saying it's good news broadly, but it is definitely some news and information, data, that if you're a property investor, you should be aware of this information, and you can use this information to your advantage when it comes to positioning your investment property in the rental market. And it could well be that you use this data to do good rather than necessarily how it could be implied that I'm suggesting we use it for evil. Not at all suggesting we use this data for evil, but in fact that we use it to inform our decision making when it comes to investing in properties, and potentially use it for good. So I'll explain more about that as we go through. But ultimately, what this is saying is that the Reserve Bank of Australia, the forecast for rent inflation is that it will continue to rise over the next 6 months. So a few things that are driving this is the massive shortage of supply of properties, with the massive influx of immigration since the COVID has finished, and we had obviously that period of time where there was no immigration into the country. I guess the limits have been raised in the post-pandemic scenario, and so that is putting a lot of pressure on the need for more properties. And having just got back from the Gold Coast this week, and having been in the Gold Coast this week, I haven't been there for a while, but to see the number of large, complex developments, with multiple dwellings on the Gold Coast, it is unbelievable. And so, what used to be Surfers Paradise as the centre of the Gold Coast, has just stretched, all the way down almost to Coolangatta, with more and more developments all the way along between Surfers Paradise and Coolangatta. It's just development site after development site. And that obviously is being driven by two things: immigration from overseas and migration from within Australia, from people leaving cities like Sydney and Melbourne, which leads us to this article, which is talking about the rental inflation. So, it's putting impact on cost of living, and therefore interest rates generally. But this one is all about rental inflation. And so the RBA is saying that they think it's going to continue, and that they're not exactly sure for how long. But I wanted to get to this table, which shows you the median rents around Australia for the quarter ending September 2023, and just have a look at those annual increases. And you can see that in the popular or populous states, they are outrageously high increases in rent. 6.2% all the way up to 10.4% is huge. And that, as I said, is a result of the lack of supply. And so we know when we're investing in property that we want the vacancy rate to be below 2%. That's one of our criteria. And we can find suburbs where that's achievable, and then we can see this data and see that there's massive increases in rents. And so you need to be thinking about that when you're deciding what's going to be the rent for your property once you take ownership of it. And the piece that I was saying before about using this information for good over evil is that you can position your property where it doesn't necessarily have to be at the top of the market. You can maybe discount your rent a little bit so that you're helping some people get into the market without having to necessarily go for the highest possible rent because of the fact that there are a lot of people out there hurting and struggling to get into properties. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out, this story just goes on to talk about the fact that vacancy rates, if you look at vacancy rates here, massively declined over a period of time. And they're down here at levels below 1.5%. So we normally look at vacancy rates of less than 2%. You could probably even refine that at the moment and get them under 1.5% to get those real superstar properties and suburbs in your analysis. And you can see again, there's just all types of low vacancy rates. So there's very little properties out there for rent, which means those people who are looking to rent are struggling to find the appropriate properties. And therefore it's putting a lot of upward pressure on rents as people chase those outcomes. The thing that I want to caution from this story is that we do know, and we have known this for some time, I've been talking about this for some time, we know that there is a large number of mortgage holders who locked in low interest rates who are going to come off those interest rates onto the variable rate this quarter, hundreds of thousands of them. So that is going to also put a lot of pressure on people's household budgets. Not that I like to use the word budgets, but I'll use it here just for the sake of simplicity. And that will likely result in some, unfortunately, distressed selling. And so there'll be potentially some downward pressure on property prices, but it won't necessarily solve the supply issue. And therefore, there's still going to be upward pressure on rental prices. So, as an investor, and if you're watching this, you are clearly somebody who's looking at being an investor, then we need to scroll back up here and just have a look at these rents. We need to be mindful that rents are rising at rather rapid rates. So you might be able to lock in a good rental amount and maybe for shorter periods. So rather than go for a 12-month period, maybe go for a 6-month period and reassess in 6 months to see what's happened in the market so that you can be reasonably aligned with what's going on in the market. So hopefully that is helpful for you as a potential or current property investor and how to utilize the data that's coming out to maximize or optimize your strategy when it comes to your investment properties. And if you're an existing property investor and something is one of your properties is coming up for rental review or renewal, then be aware of the data and be aware of what the market is achieving so that your property can do as best as it possibly can. Because it's important that you keep up with the market so that you're getting those incremental increases and you're getting closer and closer to cash flow positive property if you've been in the negative side of things. And with the rise in interest rates over the last 12 months, there's lots and lots of investors whose properties have gone from being positive into negative cash flow. This is one way that you can help rectify that position or reverse that position by making sure that your weekly rent is keeping up with what's happening in your market. So use that to the best of your ability. Be kind, but also at the same time, you need to look after your investments. So use that data to drive your investment strategy forward. Hopefully that was helpful. Leave me a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notified. And if you're watching on Facebook or somewhere else, LinkedIn, make sure you leave a comment. Let us know what you thought, and share widely if you can, so that more people get to see these weekly wisdoms and we can get more and more people informed about what's going on. See you again next week for another Woody's Weekly Wisdom.